All right, welcome back to another day here at the 7 Day Fast Start series. Today, guess who's back? Alan and Robert. You should be familiar by now. We got day number 6, which is all about getting your first 10 back-end deals. Today is really the two things that we're going to be breaking down is effectively getting people to come to you and then sort of the sales call aspect of it. It's kind of one of those things that's been beaten to death in the industry, and we have a slightly different take on it. And Alan is one of these people who he'll do, 5 sales calls, and he can just kind of, gather a lot of data and kind of see the patterns and see what's working, what's not really working, and what needs to be changed and improved, and where there's room for innovation and all this stuff. So it's a really, really important part for those of you guys that are doing high ticket sales. And if you're doing, the AC model where you have a front end and you have a back end, this is really, we say that the acquisition offer is really sort of the most crucial component because that's the thing that gets people in the door. But the truth is, once you've done that, then this becomes the next big crucial component because you can have a great front end offer that doesn't really make a lot of money if you spend money on ads and just sort of break even. So this back end is really where things happen and where money comes in and stays and doesn't go right back into the business. And what I mean by that is profit comes out, So intro 7-figure economics and the AC model was day 1, the market superpower disruptive idea. Day 3, we covered getting people in the door. Day 4, about, getting them from there to basically here through the awareness bridge and mapping out that profit center, the back end. And then day 5 was just about launching. And here we are today to talk about getting people to come to you once they're aware of you, once they've entered your world. How do you get them to come to you and sort of ask for further help and all that? And there's a lot of stuff that goes into it from a positioning standpoint and stuff like that. So Alan's done a lot of this for us. So I'm basically just going to be interviewing him today. And this is a topic that we've kind of touched on before, but maybe we'll brush up on it a little bit because architected so they willingly want to give you money. And, part of this is this whole idea of, not having to push emotional buttons versus just having the value there flat out for them to see and for them to realize that, hey, this is probably something I want to buy versus doing this, mental gymnastics and like convincing people to buy stuff from you. So that's really one part of it. But the other part of it is sort of them coming to you willingly as opposed to you going to them. And of course, we do that at first when we sort of let them find out about us, when they see our ads and they show up and they buy our front end offer. But now they're in our world, right? So then we need them to come to us and so on. So, Alan, anything to add on that front before we, I guess, dig a little bit more into the 4 stages of this? We can start. Why don't you touch on this clients for life philosophy? It's about getting people to not just pay you once, but more than once. For years to come, and how we have quite good retention in our high ticket program and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is like the biggest thing to realize that people really love to buy, they love to spend money, right? Because it's like a
Right.
it's like a very it's a good experience, like dopamine hits. There's a term called retail therapy in our society where people actually go spend money just to feel better, right? And so this is very common. They love to buy, but they hate being sold to, right? And so the problem is like in our industry, well, in marketing in general, there's this thing where it's like it's a lot of push selling, right? Where it's like they're people are going to them, trying to get them to buy by pushing emotional buttons. So they're being sold to, and they're not creating an engineering, architecting environment or processes where people want to buy from them. So people love to buy. They just they hate being sold to, right? Because they kind of want to buy on their terms. And so like what you want to do is you want to architect the experience where they think they're buying on their terms, but they're being basically buying on your terms, right? And so this comes with basically architecting a sales process. So if the end market knows that this is a sales process, they're going to resist the sales process, right? So for example, at this current state of internet marketing where we are, everybody knows that strategy session is really a sales call, right? There's no strategy there. Ironically, in our strategy sessions, we actually do give a strategy, and then the sale is the second part of it. But that's not the point here. And so what ends up happening is like they come on these strategy sessions with like tools to fight it already. So for example, somebody will come and say, I left my credit card in the office, right? I can't get it. It's like, well, why would you leave your credit card in the office? It doesn't make sense. You're carrying your wallet, right? Or somebody will say like, or they'll ask for payment plans or stuff like that. They come already kind of like ready to do battle. And so that's kind of the symptoms of them being aware of the sales process, and then basically they're resisting the sale, right? And so you can no longer go like brute force enter the market and basically brute force using strategy calls. And so what happens is like when you're buying advertising like we do, you fuck this up and you're out of business because it's like, you can't spend any more money. You're not going to make any money. So you have to do it right. But like a lot of guys that are group oriented, organic marketing oriented, like a lot of those guys are like, in groups and they like DM you and stuff like that and try to have small talk. Like they'll still do it because what they do is like they're just burning a ton of free leads, right? And so if there's a ton of free leads, what ends up happening is they don't care, right? So they'll message like 1,000 people and one person will buy, right? Maybe, right? And so they keep going. It's good for them because like their cost of living is low or whatnot, right? And so that's a problem because what ends up happening is like you start a relationship really bad because ultimately if you do push marketing, push sales instead of pull based selling, you end up kind of manipulating and tricking somebody and pushing them into buying your stuff, and the person doesn't feel good about it anymore, right? So it's like they're in this environment where they're kind of still unsure, but they bought it because of all these other reasons. They didn't really buy it for their own reasons. They bought it for your reasons, right? And so the relationship is bad. Then them doing the work, them following through, them doing anything kind of goes down, and therefore they're not a renewable financial resource anymore, right? And so what Robert was saying a second ago was like, you get a customer once at like $5,000 to $10,000. Well, guess what? Like if you do right by that customer, if you help them get results, help them get success, help them do all these things, what ends up happening is that person will give you another $5,000 to $10,000 and another $5,000 to $10,000 and another $5,000 to $10,000 for a very long time. And so if you look at every single company, for example, like Apple gets a lot of my money every single year. They get like $2,000 to $10,000 out of me every year. Apple does, right? Netflix gets money out of me. Amazon gets money out of me. Bike companies get a lot of money out of me. Things like that. So what ends up happening is like they do this very well, right? And so like when I'm shopping from Apple, there's no VSL or somebody at Apple, like you don't go to the Apple store and it's like, let me give you a strategy call with this laptop, right? It's like you go there and they're like, how would it make you feel, to do this? None of that shit, it's just very natural selling. And so what we do is we architect the entire process so that people willingly want to give you money, and it becomes a whole lot easier. So like, I don't know what the average closing rates are in the industry. I don't really pay attention to what other people are doing, but like I know ours, like our closing rates are like 95% at like $6,500 to $10,000 right now, which is crazy, right? And that's kind of unheard of, but it's true. And so that's kind of the overarching philosophy that we have here. Let's see. Yeah. So clients for life philosophy. So basically like you want to do this so that you have clients for life, right? And so in our industry, there's this constant fucking need, to get more clients, right? And it's like everybody's like, I want more clients, and it's like, holy shit! It's like, how can you not keep your clients? There's something wrong there, right? Because if in your business you constantly need more clients, fundamentally you have a wrong business, because it's like, what's happening? Like, where are they going, right? Where are they leaving, right? And so it's like your business should be like so that you fix your marketing. So you have a marketing problem, like you fix your marketing using the funnels we run, whatever, and now you're getting a lot of customers, right? Then the next problem you should have is like a capacity problem, meaning like I don't have enough time or energy or space, so I need to raise my prices, right? So a lot of these guys out there, they'll be like, just charge $10,000 for your shit, whatever, or $3,000, whatever, they just kind of throw these like weird fucking numbers that, out of their ass. There's no supply demand curve on there, right? And so like I have a local friend here, he went to graphic school, did all this stuff, and it was like he tries to dabble in graphic design here and there, like gets freelance jobs, right? But every time he goes into it, his prices are like, $200, $300, $400, $500 a page. And the thing that sucks about that is because like there's no experience or supply and demand curve on that, right? So there's nobody else to compete with. So it's like he's pulling prices arbitrarily out of his ass and saying like, yeah, I want this much. Well, that's fine if you want that much, but who is willing to pay you that much? Like all prices on earth are basically supply and demand, right? That's it. It's like supply and demand. You have more supply of something, the price goes down. You have more demand of something, the price goes up. And so, and so the whole thing is like you want to basically get a bunch of customers, get a bunch of clients, and then you want to keep them, and you want to get to the point where you can turn off your ads and you can still run a very healthy business. So the litmus test of a business is like, do you live or die by your ads, right? So as long as you have to pay Facebook, Google, or whatever for business, then you live and die by the ads and you haven't really architected your business to the point where you have a renewable financial resource, right? So if you look at corporate America, right, like they focus a lot about market share, demographics, and all that stuff. And so, for example, if you have like I don't know, let's say Honda, right? Honda, like when Honda makes a Honda Civic or something like a car, they say, they make a car based on a monthly payment of the market, right? So it says, okay, our market for this segment is like they make like, $35,000 a year. They spend this much on rent or mortgage, they spend this much on food, they have this much money left over, and we're going to insert ourselves and get a portion of that money every month, right? So they're like, okay, you give us $200 a month for this Honda Civic or whatever, and we're good, right? And so that's how it works, and that's how you should treat your clients, right? So basically, like if you look at your clientele, and your client on average makes say 10,000 a month, or 50,000 a month, or whatever they make, you should architect your business and marketing so that you get a percentage of that by providing them value on a continuous basis for months, years, for years to come, right? And they don't basically go anywhere, right? And so, like if somebody's, for example, and it's interesting, cool, because it's like as the more you help them, grow, the more money they make, the bigger pie you can take, right? So instead of getting like say $1,000 a month from a client, now you can get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And as your clients, success grows, your success grows, and you acquire more of them, and then you basically keep adding this, them to the pile, and then you have more and more customers, right? And so basically, like if you have to constantly get more clients, you're doing it wrong. Like you should have a capacity problem, not a marketing problem. So like you want to basically like solve the marketing problem once and for all. So therefore you can raise your prices. And the way you do it is by architecting stuff so people constantly willingly give you money, and you keep them for years to come. And so like you should look at them as a renewable financial resource, right? Because if there's, right now, let's say you have 10 competitors and in 6 months you have 100, right? Well, who cares, right? Because now you have this moat around you, right? And so like, I got this from Dan Kennedy, because like Dan Kennedy calls it the herd, and he has like people paying him, 20, 30 grand a year for like 10, 15 years, and it's like, cool. And I'm like, man, that's nice, And in our space, excuse me, in our space, it's like we see a lot of, this get more clients mentality. And it's like, wait a minute, that's wrong. How about like you just learn to keep the ones you got? And then when you can do that, then you can compound effects, right? And so with that in mind, before I jump into the next section, Robert, do you want to have anything to add to this?
Like before we go to the next slide, or?
No, into the next bullet points here. Like
no,
how to do it.
I'm all good.
Excuse me. All right. So the way you do it is, if you go out there and you do push marketing, you're basically, going people, and you're pushing, you're pushing thoughts into their brains, and people resist. So if I go to you and say, you got to do this, this, and this, and it goes against everything you're doing, then that's my idea. That's not your idea, and I'm expecting I want you to change the world, right? And so people are generally don't want to change unless the change is like more beneficial, right? And they can see that, and that's basically what you're doing. So like you're architecting change. Excuse me. That's like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but like throat's kind of getting dry. But yeah, so you're basically architecting change. And so like when you can instill the architecture of change, then what ends up happening is like people want to change, and then they're like, okay, they can change for the better. So nobody wants to change for the worse, right? So what a lot of marketers will do is like they'll go and present solutions without any of this conceptually at all anywhere in the framework, right? And so basically, if you go to somebody and let's say that you have a client, you have a better way of doing things, right? And then you see how they're doing things. Most people completely disregard what they're doing, and they say do this thing, but that means they have to change everything they're already doing. It's not like an extension of what they're already doing to making it better, right? And so like most people want security and predictability, and so like if you have this gap of change that's too big, what ends up happening is like you're violating their security and predictability of them, and then they don't want to do it, right? And then you really have to sit there and like keep pressing the buttons, right? Instead, what you do is like you use examples. You use examples, you use stories, you offer value, you give them tips how they can make things better. Like for example, right, this 7-day fast start and me telling you how to do this. Basically, this is an example of me telling you what to do and how to make it better, right? Without saying just go do my stuff. I'm basically showing you a different path, enlightening you guys like on how to do things differently, right? So ultimately, what you want to do is like when you communicate with your potential clients or customers, whoever, you want to show them how to do things differently. And then what that does is that basically starts a seed of an idea that, hey, maybe if I do things differently, it can work better, right? And so instead of like, going into their brains and sticking in like 10% information or whatever, 10 thoughts, you insert like 3 thoughts that are very effective of doing things differently, and then they're going to insert like 2,000 of their own thoughts, right? And so, basically it becomes their idea. I want to do this, right, etc., right? And so the thought starts to originate with them, right? And so what you do is you obviously have a way of things are doing differently, and so now you have a solution. So we're going to touch upon the solution problem model. So typically the way it works is like you have a problem, and I'm going to solve you that problem for a bunch of money, right? And what we do is we offer a solution. Say, here's the entire solution to your problem, and they can see it. Okay, they can see it, and if they can see the whole solution, they can make a decision, because then it takes away all the uncertainty and all the risk, right? And so if you go to somebody and you say, here's a solution to the problem, and then you automatically removed all the uncertainty, all the risk, now the probability of them acting on it goes up, right? And so then you say, okay, and they say, well, what's the next step? You're like, well, I can help you implement it. And that's what we do with our accelerator. We basically help people implement all these ideas, right? And so same thing I'm doing with you guys now is I'm giving you the solution to the problem you guys have of closing high ticket clients. And then the whole thing is like basically helping you implement it, right? But if I was to kind of like have to like hide all this stuff in the background and then kind of push your buttons and explain it, it'd be like a really hard thing, because, you would have resistance. All right. So we do the solution problem model, and like you can read the book, you can go into the other videos to learn more about that. And then it's basically next step, once you get, let's see, we have a little jumpiness here. Hold on, get them to come to you when they come to you on the phone. Okay, cool. So, and then, the hardest part is basically getting the customer. Easiest part is keeping them. So we talked about that already. And the interesting thing about all this is like people think, a lot of these gurus and, internet marketers, they think that the close happens on the call, right? They think like the close doesn't happen on the call. The sale actually happens way before the call, right? Like people decide to work with you long before, that they give you money, right? And it's the same thing with refunds. Like people decide to refund long before they ask for a refund, right? And so you have to like figure out this point in time where the sales actually takes place, right? Because the close is a formality, and then you got to figure that out, engineer, or if you can't figure out, you got to figure out where to insert that, engineer that, and then basically when they get on the phone, it's just the formality of a close, and everything's like, okay, this is awesome, right? And so again, they decide long before you get on a call, right? And so like this is the same thing with like luxury goods. Like when you go to luxury good, it's like, you don't go like how do you call it? You don't go to like say a Louis Vuitton store and you decide to go buy a bag. It's like you decide to buy a bag long before it, and going to the store is a formality of you kind of figuring out what you like, right? And so if you look at all luxury goods are sold on pull sales principles, and all mass market goods are sold on push principles, unless they're like commodities, right? And so the way it works is like, you push people with facts, right? And so it's like, if you get them on a strategy call or webinar, you push facts and stuff, etc. But the way you pull people is you pull people in with stories. Let me see, I have something here. Hold on. You pull people with stories, symbols, and imagery, etc. Right? And so it's like basically you want to present stuff, and then they want what you got, right? So be it your knowledge, be it your expertise, be it your offer, be it your design, be it like other people that do your system and stuff. So like right now, like we had this guy from UK hit us up yesterday. And he bought our offer. He put everything together. He's getting like customers for like $5 a pop. And so after this call, we're gonna go email the whole list and show our whole list, his stats and his offer, and tell him how great a job he's doing and how they can do it too, right? So it's cool. And basically like you want to basically pull people in with showing them, right? So it's like show don't tell, right? Show don't tell. The more you can show, and the less you tell, the better, right? And so basically that's it. So let's write to the next slide.
So effectively, what we're covering today, there's 4 parts to this, right? So first part is that what Alan just kind of spoke on, and we'll go into it a little bit more, but it's them actually coming to you. And then when they do come to you, how do you handle that? And then once you're on the phone with them or Zoom or whatever the case may be, how do you handle that? And then after they buy, how do you handle that? And I would say there's like, probably out of these 4, well, first of all, nobody really tries to get people to come to them because most, at least in our industry, right, I would say 99% have more of a push type of marketing, right, where they try to go to them. But the number 4 here, it's like after they buy, this is a big thing that people really mess up and that really kind of shoot themselves in the foot. And there's this saying out there that's kind of accepted to be right in our industry, which is, if I think it's something like, the more you email people, the more money you're going to make. But what happens with that is it's very short-term thinking, right? Which I've been known to be guilty of. I just wrote a post about it the other day. But it's a very short-term thinking, right? Because you're burning the list. So you're emailing them 6 times a day, just pushing, selling, trying to get the most amount of money out of them that you can at this very moment. And for each email that you send, we all go like, oh man, here we go. Here's another email, unsubscribe, right? But there's a couple of people in our industry that don't do this, that are doing it in a very different way. They email you when there's something to say, right? Maybe some value, or maybe they're having some kind of rare sale or something like that. But when you get an email from them, you open it up. So they have this great balance of like, here I am. And actually, one thing that we haven't really talked about in this whole 7-day fast start, Alan, I think, is this idea of marketing is a lot about imagination, right? Something that you taught me, which is it's a lot about what's just going on in the person's head that you're not really saying. So an example of this actually is, Sage, who's actually here with us live, I wrote a post the other day, which was something along the lines of, don't be a burden on people. You should be a carrier of other people's burdens, right? And for some reason that resonated with him. And then he was commenting on that post and just saying how he couldn't stop thinking about this post. And we're going to dig into that more now, but that's a big thing of getting them to come to you, is about the imagination and just putting things out there and planting seeds and just letting those seeds grow and just living, like Inception style, just living in their minds until they come to you and so on. And when they do come to you, how to not mess that up and how to actually turn that into, the same way that we nurture leads instead of filter them, that you turn this customer or this person who just bought a high ticket program, turn them into, even more excited after the purchase, as opposed to what usually happens, which is they buy something and then they're disappointed by, the reception and what they got and so on. But anyway, we're going to dig into these 4 things. So on this topic, Alan, getting them to come to you, I talked a little bit about this, idea of seeds and whatnot, but, lead nurturing and the awareness bridge, how does that play into getting people to come to you? Because I think this is the holy grail of what everybody wants here, right? Everybody wants people to just show up to their door and say, hey, I want to work with you. And so there is actually a way to do it. And so...
Yeah, I mean, it's easy. You just, you just take care of the other person, right? Like, you truly put in a position where, like, you want the best for them, you help them, you offer a lot of value to them without expecting them to buy your stuff, right? And so, like, we're doing this and like a lot of other stuff we do without any expectation that, any of you are going to come into our back end, right? And then when you do that, it comes off as very authentic. But if you do it with like an ulterior motive, people can sense that, right? They can just tell, right? Because people hold back. There's some bullshit. The bullshit, detector goes off, right? And so the first off is like, truly, just giving it all away, helping people, being invested in their success, and knowing that like the more success they have, the more money you can make, right? Because like, the more money your clients or people around you make, the better, because the tide lifts all boats, so to say. And so, you do that, and then that's first step of them coming to you. The second step of them coming to you is using imagery, like symbols of credibility, as we call it, right? And so, for example, like, what does your industry value, right? So, like a symbol of credibility could be like a nice office, like it could be like bookshelves and stuff like that. It could be books, it could be like examples, it could be like a Lamborghini, it could be a Ferrari, it could be a mansion,
Harvard diploma,
yeah, exactly,
ClickFunnels award,
yeah. It depends what they kind of see, right? So symbols of credibility, right. But then your knowledge and expertise and stuff can be a symbol of credibility. So for me, it's like I'm too lazy to put up a show. And so, like, what I just do is I just, go and talk and kind of show them that I know my shit, and then people listen, right? And that's kind of my symbol of credibility that I use, and that's the number one tool in my toolbox, right? But for some guys, a toolbox, then their number one tool might be a car, right? So they'll do a lot of videos and driving around an expensive car. For some guys, it could be, I don't know, like, testimonials and case studies. It could be that. It could be doing interviews. It's just like whatever you're good at, That's basically it. But symbols of credibility, something to get people to paying attention to you, that this guy's real. And then the other thing is just, demonstrating that, you know your shit, right? And so, like, the way that people know that you know your shit is basically if you can articulate the problem they have and then have a solution where they go, oh my God, I didn't think about that, right? And so, for example, like one of the things I do like if somebody comes to us, like, we have this thing where it's like, are you in control of the sales process, or are you, or not, right? And so like I can ask like 3 questions, and I can know if they're in control of the sales process. If they're not in control of the sales process, their whole business never works. And like as soon as I identified that, point it out, fix it, it's like, holy shit, it's like, okay, wow, I'm in, right? And so like, if you can articulate their problems, right, that they're thinking about but they're unsure, then and then present a solution, then it's like game over. Basically, like there's like, okay, this guy gets it, right? And you basically just start attracting a lot of people, right? Yeah, and that's a big one. And you can, you also do this through your offer that you run, but mostly through emails, Facebook posts, etc.
For sure.
So let's see if there's more. There's more of these notes here. I didn't even look at my notes. Hold on, guys. Let me just zoom in here. Yeah, so basically, you have lead nurture awareness bridge, and so the way you do it is like, as you do this articulation of their problems and solutions and stuff like that, you keep kind of solving the problem. They see your stuff, and what you're doing is like you're laying bricks for this bridge, right? And this bridge basically, leads to your back end, right? And then what you want to do is you just want to be very open about like, we work with these people. Here's what we charge, etc. Don't hide your pricing and stuff like that, because a lot of people out there, they'll hide their pricing, and then when somebody comes on a call, it's like surprise, surprise, right? So like we're very open with our pricing. Like our accelerator is $6,500, whatever, and it's probably gonna go to 10 grand. And that's kind of our pricing. Before it was five grand, now it's up. So we don't really hide our pricing at all. We're very upfront about it, right? And so the more you do this, the more they're contextually aware and everything that's going on. So that's the first step, right? So they basically have a full clarity as to what's going on. There's no mystery and stuff like that, because like if you don't know a lot about somebody or what they do, and if you sense they're hiding, you automatically distrust them, like you don't trust them, right? And so it's like, you ever like meet people and like they have like, this cool life, great life, and you just don't know how the hell they make money, and it's like, doesn't make sense. You're kind of like, something off about this guy, right? Or like, they never tell a complete story, and so you subconsciously distrust them. So ultimately you want to avoid it, right? And so you basically need to have create full contextual awareness, and then they need to be fully aware where you and your company fit into everything they do, and how you can help them reach their end goal outcomes, right? And so like you do that through your communication, explaining, doing value bombs, explaining how it works, connects everything, right? And so you do this via effective communication. Allows you to use their imagination. Their imagination is the most powerful tool, right? And so the problem is like, as humans, we're all very much different, right? So it's like the way I think is different than Robert thinks, the way you think, etc., right? And so it's like we all experience reality through a different lens, right? And so it's like when I say something, for example, if I say door, right, you might think of a black door, and somebody might think of a white door, or somebody might think of a door with like round handles, or the regular handles. And what happens is, because like we all have a different representation of what a door looks like, right? But to us it's a door. And so what ends up happening is like you want to talk and kind of give enough where it's like their imagination takes over, and where they're like, okay, they start to think about it, right? You don't want to be there and basically start architecting their imagination for them, like overwhelming them with facts. Like, here's what you got to do, fact. Because like, if you go back, if you look back to when you were in school, right, younger, like, who remembers any facts? Like, nobody remembers facts, but you remember the stories and experiences, right? And so that's what you want to do, right? And so the way you do that, is you create value bombs, right? And so like, the first word there is value, and then bomb, right? And so like value, it's like this very abstract word in our space, which is like, well, what the hell does it mean, right? It's kind of weird, right? It's like, what's valuable? How do I determine what's valuable? So like typically value is measured in money, right? Like, okay, this is valuable, so therefore it costs X money, right? But the problem is value typically comes before money. So you have to give value in order to get money, right? Otherwise, value and money aren't equal, right? Otherwise, you couldn't find things valuable that cost very little money, like experiences and stuff, right? Or spending time with people. And so value means what's useful to you, right? That's how I define it. So like value means like what is useful to me. So for example, spending time with a friend might be useful or beneficial to you, and that's valuable to you. Eating a certain food, whatever it is, doesn't matter of the price, might, be valuable or useful to you. What type of work you do might be valuable or useful to you. So you want to offer them what's very useful to them. That's what value means, right? And bomb means like to surprise them. Like, you're like, here it is, and it's useful. Like, holy shit, I wasn't expecting that, right? So you do value bomb. So to basic definition is like, to offer what's very useful and applicable to them without them expecting it, and then you basically make their day, month, year better, right? And so, they measure it, you don't measure it, but they measure is how useful it is, right? And so money is a byproduct of value. And so what ends up happening is, once you do this enough, they'll raise their hand and say, hey man, that was really valuable to me, and they'll basically reach out to you. They'll, message you, and if you give them, sometimes they won't reach out to you because they're not like a self-activator, they're kind of passive. So you have to offer them a chance to, a permission to kind of step forward, right? Because what ends up happening is like the people that typically come out of the shadows by themselves and come to you, they give themselves permission. But because you are external to them, like you're, as a guru or whatever, you're positioned way above them, they don't, they hesitate to come forward to you. So you have to give them permission to come forward to you, right? And that's the biggest thing. It's like you have to give them permission. And so when you give them permission, then they'll, reach out to you. They raise their hand actively or passively, start a conversation, do a demo, book a call, and close, right? And so the way you give them permission is like, you send an email like, hey, want to book a call, want to work together, etc. Or you create a post and say, we're looking to work with XYZ people. You basically give them permission. That's a really big idea, because most people, especially if somebody's in a higher authority of expertise than them, they don't give themselves permission to move forward and act on it, right? It's a hierarchy. Like humans, like even though like there's equality and everything going on, we tend to sort ourselves into hierarchy, right? And so then the question is like, how do you know if you're doing it right? Like how do you know if you're doing the value bomb stuff right? And you'll see it because like they'll be participating in your thoughts with you on posts, in emails, in chats and stuff. Like they'll start conversations with you and kind of like expand on that conversation, right? So for example, like, I'm talking about sales right now, right? And so like one of you might hit me up and like, hey, Alan, that was like fucking awesome. I really like that. And they'll start, this one thought, they'll kind of start unpacking, right? Unpacking. And so the more they unpack it, the better, because they're actually communicating with you. They're telling you what's going on. And then especially like, if they start telling you their story and about their offer and their problems, right? So for example, like, you can say, like you can give a tip or whatever, value bomb, and then you'll see people start in the comments or email or chat, whatever, they'll start kind of like responding and telling you the exact problem they ran into, the story, etc. So people don't tell you their problems unless they feel like you care about them or have a solution for them, right? And then also like they don't tell you their story and stuff like that unless they feel like you're listening. So they feel that they can trust you and they're very comfortable with you, right? And so they look at you as an ally and a friend, right? And you'll see this basically them participating more and more in your thoughts and activities. Like you literally see it, right? And if you're doing this and you don't have any response, then the value bomb isn't as useful or beneficial to them. So you have to adjust course, right? And so what ends up happening is like if you do this enough, you gain positioning and status, in your group, whatever, in your tribe or your list, whatever. And the way you can tell how you gain status is they'll start asking you things on what you're not an expert at, right? And basically that's how you reach the ultimate level of authority, right? And so for example, people asking LeBron James what he thinks about politics and shit, right? Well, like, LeBron, he just went to high school. I don't know if he dropped out of high school or I think he went to high school, right? He didn't go to college, right? So he's like really great at basketball, but as far as like, on paper qualifications and shit, like he's like zero qualification to give his opinion on any politics, anything, or any like policy, whatever. He just does not have the experience, right? Or like actors, like you'll see somebody like an actor or whatever, let's say George Clooney or something, right? He's giving his 2 cents about this. It's fine. Everybody should have an opinion. Everybody's entitled of opinion. Like it's part of freedom, right? But it's like they're not qualified to have their opinion because they have zero background research in that, right? And so people confuse that because they're like, oh, it's this person's, an expert at basketball. This person's an actor. So I'm going to ask him for opinion about things that are unrelated to their core field of expertise, right? And so, like, when you position yourself high enough, you'll see people coming to you and basically asking your opinion about things that, like, you don't even teach, right? So, for example, let's say you teach marketing and sales like we do, right? I have guys coming to me in the accelerator privately asking me about, other things, like, for example, like what t-shirts to get or like what, or where to travel, or if I can help them with their marriage issues and shit, I shit you not, I have that, and so it's like they come to you for all sorts of other problems. And that's how you know, right? And so if like basically like if you're an authority in one area, you're automatically an expert in all areas. And so like once they start asking you all these things, that's how you kind of hit, you're kind of reaching like super expert, super guru status in your group. And so that's kind of the process of how you do it, right? And so let's go to the next. Robert, feel free to add anything to this, and let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, so I just want to add the practical side of this because that's kind of on a theoretical level, right? So on a practical side, you'll do something like if you look at what we've done, we have our book, people go into the membership area, and then we have the 7-day fast start, and the 7-day fast start just kind of lays out, how we work with clients, the different mindsets, and all these things, and how we approach all the different aspects of it, right? So we're sharing value bombs with you guys, but it's kind of like a logical sequence of of this video series. You know, it's going from the beginning to setting up the front end offer, building the awareness bridge, and then the back end offer. So it's very logical. It's like a little mini course, right? So we do all that, but then we use marketing automation tools to make sure that, you know, for once, like we can track your guys' activity inside of our membership area. So we can see what you've watched and what you haven't watched. We can tag you different ways. If we had your phone number, we could literally have somebody call you and be like, hey, we saw you didn't watch day 3. Like, we're not going to do that, but we could do that. We could be like, hey, you didn't watch day 3, you know, here's the link. Why don't you go watch it?
We'll send
So
somebody
we're
to
not
your
going to do
house.
that, but we're going to send emails. You know, we could send SMS. We could retarget you on Facebook for day 3 because we would know that you didn't watch day 3, but we know that you did watch day 2. So we can kind of sort of prod you in the right direction as far as forcing the consumption goes. We can't make you sit down and watch it, but we can continuously put the next video in the sequence in front of you using marketing automation. So that's very powerful, you know? So that's how we sort of ensure that X amount of videos or X amount or certain videos or certain messages or certain seeds have been planted. And we do that, you know, through marketing automation. So it's very, very powerful. So that's just kind of the practical side to this side of these 4 different phases. So getting them to come to you, you heard the theories, and that's kind of how you achieve it on a practical side. So let's move on to the next slide, which is when they do come to you, how do you actually handle that moment, you know, because they might come to you in different ways. They might reply to an email, they might hit you up on Facebook or whatever, or they might just go book a call. There's different things that can happen, but I guess just for argument's sake, let's say they didn't book a call, but they're actually coming to you and displaying some sort of interest. So how do we treat that situation, Alan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So basically, they come to you, and the first step to figure out if you can truly help them, right? Because like sometimes they'll have a situation where you can't help them, right? And so, you know, it's tough, right? It's tough, and like you don't want to waste their time, you don't want to waste your time, and so you have to be selective, right? Who you talk to, right? And so like, you know, they'll talk to you, whatever, and they'll typically want to chat, and you know, you say, well, okay, cool, you know, let's schedule a call, let's talk, right? And the way you frame it is you say, look, it's like, you know, it's a lot easier for me to speak because I can dimensionalize a lot of the things, of helping you versus just, you know, sending you these like limited texts or whatever exchanges. So here, book a call, whatever. And then we'll go over X, Y, Z, right? You give an expectation of what, you know, they're going to get, right? We can come up with strategy, etc., right? And so basically, once it ends up happening on the call is like, these notes are out of order, but I'll try to kind of stitch it together. Basically, it's like, you know, you want to walk them through the process, and they, you know, the goal is of them to ask how much on the call, right? And so typically, like what I do is like, you know, I have a sales process, sales script, sales system that I use, and I have like 3 different scripts. They're all based on 3 different personalities, right? And so most of the problems out there, like you run into with you know, industry scripts, is like they give you one size fits all script, and it's like, for example, if you're introverted, whatever, that script is not, you know, is the extroverted script is not going to work for you. If you're, for example, like, you know, a lot of Middle Eastern people that we work with, you know, like we had Self4Us before, like they're very direct, right? And like so. Like if you have like a Middle Eastern person, you know, you can't tell them shit. Like, you know, it just doesn't stick to them, right? And that's culturally how they are, which is great. And so like I have a script that works for them, right? But basically, like all those scripts, regardless of what they are, how they work, they accumulate to the question of how much, right? And so like I have a process that I take them through, and then end of the call, basically they have to be the one to ask how much, right? Because the thing is like, the one who's asking how much is always interested in buying. Like you don't ask how much unless you want to buy, right? And so that's a sales process. But you always have to have a sales process. You take them through the way it works. And so, I have like what's called a dynamic sales script. It's not one size fits all, right? And so, you have different type of people that come on your calls, right? So you have, for example, you have to bucket these in your industry, right? So for example, you have the numbers people, you have the impact people, you have the proof people, you have like, who else is doing it people, you have the risk aversion people, you have all these things, right? And so the way I do that is when I talk to somebody, I'll ask them a simple question. I say, what attracted you to the automatic clients model, right? So whatever you're selling, you just say what attracted you to it. And the keyword is like what attracted you is very important, right? And they'll basically tell you, I like the numbers, I saw the possibilities, I saw the math. And so you can automatically tell this guy's all about numbers. And so everything else you talk about has to be revolve around numbers, right? If somebody's like, if somebody says, I really, can impact people, whatever, I can do that, et cetera, everything has to revolve around impacting people, right? If they're about proof, it's like, I saw your screenshots, I saw the proof, I saw this works. Everything has to revolve around proof, because then you got to show them who else did it, etc. Right? So you have this primary anchor of conversion, right? But the thing is, like, the first thing to do is to figure out like what type of person they are, and what do they want to see? What's their motivating thing, right? And so, for example, like if you have a numbers guy, right? Typically, numbers people are risk aversion, right? Because they calculate their odds and risk, right? And so it's like, if you have somebody that's numbers, and then your whole pitch is about making an impact and making a difference in people's lives and stuff, they don't give a shit. It's like they're not hearing you. Like, you speak English, but you can be speaking like a different language. They're not going to hear you because it doesn't register. It doesn't have any meaning to them. People only hear what has meaning to them, right? And so you have to figure it out. So you have to ask, what type of what attracted you. They tell you whatever, and like you just take notes, and then you ask them, be like, what you try so far, right? Then you want to basically find a pattern of behavior. So what you try, what's your journey here? That's the next question I ask. What's your journey? And they'll tell me like, I started this, I did this, I paid this, etc. So if somebody comes to me and asks them for their journey, and they're like, I paid this other guy $10,000, or I paid this guy $5,000. I know there's no resistance in terms of price, so I don't even have to kind of like worry about the price later. They already told me they're a buyer, right? But if somebody comes to me, they're like, I never bought anything, I thought about buying, that person's gonna, be harder to close. And then, if somebody says, for example, like, I don't know, like, let me think of, I tried these things and I failed, right? I tried webinars, I failed. And so, okay, so if you go to somebody and you say, and they say what failed, you can't have that in your sales pitch later. And you're like, we're going to go do that, right? So for example, a lot of people have tried webinars, right? So if we were teaching a webinar model, and if somebody came to me and was like, I tried webinars and failed. And then I go, yeah, we teach you how to do a webinar. It's like, oh, no. I already failed. I already lost a lot of money with it. I'm not going to do that again, right? So like you don't want to fight this resistance. So whatever they failed at, you want to kind of negate it and tell them how this is different and why they failed. You want to enlighten them, right? So for example, if somebody comes to me and, I ask them, what attracted you, blah, blah, blah. They give me their, archetype, who they are, whatever. And then I ask them, what's your journey here? And then they tell me their journey. And then I'll be like, okay, well, for example, let's say they say, I did webinars and I failed. Right? I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. So I did webinars too, which is true. I did webinars for like 4 years, made a lot of money with them. And, they don't work anymore. And why don't they work? I'm like, because, attention, people registering, people know where to go. I tell them why they don't. They go, oh shit, now I understand why I failed. So you basically educate them why they failed. And they're like, okay, now that you know why you failed, here's a different solution, better, that works differently. Let me tell you about this, right? And you basically have this like natural transition into like, from like help offering that, and like, then here's what you can do better, right? And then you literally give them like the whole solution to what they could do better at what they could do, right? And you do it, and then what ends up happening is like the natural extension, of course, again, it goes solution problem. I just gave them a whole solution to the call, right? And then the natural solution, of course, would be like, how do I do it, right? And so they'll ask you, well, like, how do I do this, right? And so like if I was to spend like, giving you all the details how this worked, it would take me like 3 hours. So like I can't, this is kind of broad strokes to kind of give you guys a nudge in the right direction, So basically, like, what ends up happening is like a two-part. So it's like, one is discovery, the three-part. One is the discovery of the stuff. Second part is a solution offering, right, which is a true strategy session. And then once you do that, if you do it right, the question they'll ask is like, well, how do I implement it? What's the steps? How can you help me, right? They'll ask for help, right? And then you're like, okay, cool. And then like you basically go to stage 2 of the presentation, which is you walk them through how you help them. So in our case, it's, we have like a 40-page onboarding worksheet. We have, about 40-page onboarding worksheet. We have all this stuff, we give them. We have the funnel, we have the ads, we have these scripts we give them, we give targeting, we give them all this stuff. And I walk them through, here's everything you're going to get, right? And so the natural conclusion is like, okay, well, this is great. Like, you're speaking my language, right? First of all, because, you already like figure out my primary pattern of interest, which is numbers, proof, impact, whatever, right? So you spoke my language. 2, it's like you obviously know what you're talking about because you solved my problem, and you articulated why I failed before or whatever, and how I can do better. And then 3, it's like you showed me the exact path of how I can get the outcome I want, right? And so therefore it's like, how much, right? And then they're just like, how much? And you're like, okay, cool. And then I say, look, it's $6,500 or whatever. And I tell them how much and what they get. And I say, look, here's how we justify our pricing. And I explain my justification, right? And so like, you always have to have a justification, a reason for your pricing. You can't just say like, like, so for example, like luxury goods, like, Hermes bags, whatever, like they're like, some guy that's like 800 years old with cancer, blind, made your bag in France, right? So, oh, okay, cool. The guy got to eat, he has like an orphanage he has to feed, right? And so like, you always have to justify it to people. If you just say, if I just say it's $6,500, it sounds very selfish, right? And you're like, well, fuck you, right? But what I do is I say, look, here it is. We walk you through this process, and then it's basically like, you just got to get one back end sale, and it's all paid off for you, which is true, right? And then the other part of it is a timeline, right? It's really important. So I tell them, like, if you come in and you know your shit, you're willing to work, you're willing to go at it, it's 3 to 5 weeks. Like from 3 to 5 weeks, you can actually go out there and get sales. And that's true because that's what we've done before with people, right? Like this one guy just came in, Steve, and like he was up in, I think 2 weeks, right? Or something like that. 3 weeks maybe. But then if, you take a sweet time, it'll take you 5 to 12 weeks. So you always give 2 options and time ranges, and they can choose like how fast they want to work, right? Because people need to project in time to see if it fits their schedule and everything, right? And yeah, and then I justify and say, look, one back end sale is $6,500, and it's basically all free for you, and the rest is profit or whatever. And then I walk them through what they get, and then like I'll show them like, here's our Slack, here's how we're always interacting with our guys. We do 2 calls a week, for 2 to 3 hours. Here's the the hot seats. I tell them exactly what's done, and then and they're like, okay, good. And then the first thing I say is like, so with our accelerator, one thing we do differently is we don't have a course, right? So like everybody out there has a course, and the problem is, as you buy shit from other gurus, they stick you in a members area with the course, and one question a week, right? And it kind of sucks because like you pay like $5,000 to $10,000 for a bunch of videos and like one question, right? So for us, it's different. It's like we don't have a course, and then it's like no course. You come in and we work with you and get your results. Very simple, right? And so that's why we have a very high success rate. And so yeah, they go there and then they and then I walk them through and they ask, okay, what do we get started? I'm like, right now, as soon as you pay, I onboard you and get you going. And so it's like that's the biggest thing is like you basically amped up this desire and they want to do it, and it's like, okay, let's do it now, right? And then I just send them the link. And then they'll literally pay on the spot. And I'm like, okay, give me your email, give me your team's email, whoever you want in. And we put the whole teams in. I welcome them to the group. And then it's great, right? And it's a really awesome experience. And so like my closing rate's like 90-95%. And it's crazy because like after I close people, I mean, Robert can attest to that. People actually thank me for the experience. It's weird. Like they pay us and then they thank me saying how it was like the best call they ever had in their lives, right? And it's like, okay, awesome, right? And so it's like when you do this, right, it's like, literally, the only people that don't buy is the people that cannot physically buy. Like they don't have money. And so there's cases where, you'll get people where they're like, you know what, I want to buy this. It's like my last money on my credit card. And usually I'll be like, nah, don't. It's like, I don't want you stressing out, right? Because it's like, if you take somebody's last dollar, they're going to be stressed out. They can't pay their bills. So it's not good, right? So like we actually like don't take the last dollar. Don't do that, and so like somebody can't pay their bills and it's like it's either this or if you're gonna eat, it's like go eat, fuck this, it's not that important, right? Don't join our shit, join when you're ready. And then what we do is like we say, we'll post in a group, whatever, and we'll help you, take the other stuff, and then when time's right, come back. And we've had people like there's times where like I actually rejected people and then they went on in the group and they were like, man, this was great, because like I'll be honest with them too, like so if they come to me and that's a big thing, if they come to me and I can't help them, like I can't help you. Or if they've come to me with like a really bad business model, I'll be like, I can't, this is shit, like it doesn't work, right? It won't work, and I'll tell them why it won't work, right? And if they don't want to change their minds, I'm like, this is not a good fit, right? Because ultimately I know if I get them in like on a lie or some selfish motive just to get their money, I got to live with them for 12 weeks. I'm not going to do that. And then I can't get them results and it's no good. And then long term, they're no good to me because, again, I can't sell them shit in the future, right? And so having this like integrity is really important and people can tell, right? And so, yeah, and the only reason people won't buy is literally if you follow this process, if they don't have money, that's it, right? And so like Robert has seen, like literally like, I'll get online and like somebody will reach out, he puts me in a chat and like, 20 minutes later, the guy's sending money. Like we had one, 2 days, the day before yesterday, like literally like schedule a call. I talked to him for 15 minutes and then like he sent us like $6,500 and he's fucking happy, right? And he's a customer for life, right? So that's cool. So, but the thing is like the big thing to realize like how they buy in the front is how they end up buying in the back, right? And so for example, one thing I omitted in this process is when you ask them like what's your journey here, right, is really important. Like, what attracted your automatic clients model. And so if somebody, for example, is like, if I hear this pattern, if they're like, I saw your ad, I clicked on it and I bought all your shit and it was great. So I know that person is like high active, meaning like they basically, they activate themselves and go all in, right? Right. And so it's like they go all in, right? And so like, I know they're going to be there, but if I have somebody that's like, I saw your ad and then I didn't buy and I saw it 3 more times and then I bought, that person needs like multiple examples to buy, right? He needs multiple dimensions of conviction, right? His conviction model is like, it takes a little more time, right? Or if somebody says, I bought your stuff, I bookmarked it, I came back. So that person needs space, right? And so like if you have a person with this pattern that they need space, or they have to see it 3-4 times, then it's like you can't go like, let's go do it now, because that person is not high initiate, right? He's reflective, like he has to go to reflect on his thoughts and everything before he buys, right? And so you got to give them space. You got to give them space, because how they buy in the front is how they buy in the back. And so like if you have like that person that's high initiate, right, and then you give them space, they're like and then they don't know what to do, and they don't buy, right? So you got to pay attention to these little behavioral patterns that help. And then basically after they buy, we have A pile, B pile clients, right? And so in direct response marketing, we have this thing called A pile, B pile. And A pile is like, mail that you check, like your bills and stuff, and B pile is ads. So you throw the B pile out, you keep your A pile, right? And so I started using this analogy for, the clients that we have is A pile, B pile, because what I notice is like there's a specific pattern after they give us money. Now I'm gonna know if they're gonna continue to stay with us long term and give us money. And basically, it's their activation, like how often they show up on calls. So like if they don't show up on our calls in a regular time, in a regular basis, they're not gonna buy. But actually that's not that true, because we had like a bunch of people who never show up on calls and like still buy with us, which is really weird. So I don't know. So it's like those people, right? So you want to pay attention to that. You want to pay attention to they implement your system. So if somebody comes and they don't implement your system, chances are they're not gonna buy again, right? And so what you have to do when you're running your accelerator, right? Like you have to identify A pile, B pile people, right? And so for example, A pile people, like I know, like I can spot who's going to be with us for like 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5 years, who we can, sell on a long-term basis. And so what I do is like, I'll use them as examples, right? And so for example, like we have one guy, Mike, right? He's doing like $1 million a year off of like, weird niche products using the model, right? And so I'll use Mike as an example. And what you want to do is you're basically activating those A pile people, using group conformity and stuff to basically preempt them that they're going to buy again. And then what you want to do is you want to use the same thing, like if B pile people, you don't sense them, you want to put them in the limelight and do it, right? But the other thing is this idea of chunking, right? And it's like chunking is like how much information can people and how much complexity they can handle at once, right? And so like I have a huge chunking capacity. Like I can look at things like in a massive, like I can look at things as a massive complex machine, and I can zoom in and out how to move different things. It doesn't overwhelm me, right? But if you ever interact with people, that like, you're like, here's what we got to do, 17 steps, right? And they're like, no, I just want to know the first 3 steps. I don't care about the other 16 steps or whatever. We're going to deal with those other steps later. I want to just deal with this, right? Just tell me this right now, right? That people has a low chunking thing, right? And so like when you do that, it's like, you can't, like, for example, like if you have low chunking, right? Meaning like you can handle a small chunk of information, right? And I hit you with this like, boulder size chunk, right? You're going to be like, oh shit, it doesn't really, how do you call it? It'll overwhelm you. It's like, and you can't process that, right? And what ends up happening, you just start tuning it out, right? So you got to figure out like how much information they can digest at once, right? And so that's when it comes down to that, when it comes to working with people, it's really important, because what a lot of people do is like they get away, like if they're especially like move away from people, meaning like they move away from pain. If you introduce a lot of complexity into what they're doing, you're introducing more pain, and they move away from that. So that's how you kind of manage the A pile, B pile. And then next up is opportunity cost. That's really big. And so like every time you sell somebody and you get them to give you, say for example with us, $6,500, at the same time what you're doing is you're getting them to you're asking them not to spend $6,500 on something else, right? And so every time, and so you're fighting 2 battles, and most people think they're fighting one battle, like they, they buy your stuff, they can buy other. It's not, that's going to happen. It's like either they buy your stuff or they buy something else, right? And that something else isn't like other people's coaching. It's like, buy that MacBook Pro, buy those shoes, take that trip, upgrade, get some new wheels for the car, put a down payment on the car, get a new couch, whatever, right? And so you're asking them not to do a lot of these things, and people are, because of the internet and everything, people are always looking to buy stuff. Remember, people love to buy, they hate being sold to, and so they see all this stuff. So like you have to architect it like this, because you're overcoming all this shit, right? And then what ends up happening is you have an external versus internal decision maker. External decision maker, again, it's like when you say what attracted you to this, early on, you can see their pattern. It'll be like they'll say I saw this guy doing it, I saw that guy doing it. And if you look at their Facebook, you can see stuff. Are they like the type to basically post a billion pictures on Instagram of themselves? Like if every picture on Facebook is them center point, or Instagram, whatever, they're external, right? That means they reference the external world, right? And so you gotta, everything you anchor has to be external. They're internal decision maker. That means like they don't care what happens outside. So like I'm an internal decision maker. So like like outside shit doesn't influence my decision making process. I'm all internal, right? And then the last thing is basically repair versus replacement, right? And this is a really big one. It's like when we're selling these people, you got to ask them like do they want you to replace their business or repair their business, right? And so like if it's repair their business, it basically what that means is like I have this business, like we have one guy, Matt, right? He has this agency he works with, right? And like he used to make like $1 million a year or something, or still does, I'm not sure, but like he wants to keep fixing it, right? It's almost like he has this car that's like this classic, and he loves this fucking car, right? And like he just wants you to fix it so he can keep driving and enjoying this car, right? He doesn't want to get into a new car, right? Because he has to relearn a lot of stuff. And so that's like a repair client, right? So if you have somebody that comes into your sales call that wants you to repair something and you're offering replacement, that's a big problem because it's like they're automatically like, no, I don't want this. I just want you to fix this part, right? So you got to fix it. If somebody has a business they hate, right? Like, I hate this business, whatever. I don't like it anymore. It requires too much time, energy. I want to replace it. Then, repairing talk won't do any good, right? So huge little distinction. So that's it as far as this slide goes. Anything else, Robert?
Yeah, just a couple of notes on this. So going back to the actual scheduling of the call. So one thing that tends to happen is in the beginning stages, you might have to go out a little bit more to meet people halfway or go to them, even if they buy your front end product. And then as your reputation builds and your status and so on, more people will come to you. But one little nugget that makes a big difference is if you do have a conversation with people and there's talks of let's schedule a call, like Alan said, then one little thing that I've noticed makes a big difference is typically what people will do is they'll be like, all right, here's my Calendly link and let me know when you booked. But then all of a sudden they're put in charge of that. And then so like Alan said many times, you want to be in charge of the sales process. So if you do that, all of a sudden you're handing up the responsibility, handing it off to them. So just one little tweak, you go, what time zone are you in the chat, in the conversation? What's Facebook, Instagram, email? What time zone are you in? Okay, is this a good time? You pick a time and then you just have their email address, whether you already have it or you ask for it, and then you schedule that call. That way it actually gets done. If you let them do it, it's going to take a long time and probably in most cases they won't even do it. The other thing is just to kind of zoom out on this, little talk that Alan just had is it comes back to this dynamic sales script. So again, what most companies do, especially in our industry, is there's a one size fits all. It's one script that works for all the people. And one of the things that Alan was talking about, and again, just to kind of zoom out on that, is not every person is going to be the same on the other side of that call, right? Some people are going to want to see numbers. Some people are going to want to see proof. Some people are going to want to know how this is going to impact their life and the people around them. And then on the external versus internal decision maker side, I did a sales call with a lady once, and at the end of the call, she goes, "So when should I join?" And immediately I identified. Well, not immediately because it was at the end of the call, but when she did say that, that's when I realized that she is an external decision maker. She's going to look to the outside world. She's going to look outside of herself to make decisions because she flat out asked me, when should I join? I go, well, now, let's do it right now. But a lot of people, like Alan, and I'm also an internal decision maker, they're actually going to be repelled by people telling them what to do. So if you're dealing with an internal decision maker and you're really like, let's say you have a great call and then you're super aggressive, like trying to push the sale right then on the spot, like there's a lot of calls. Well, Alan's like, okay, this guy's in, but he needs to make the purchase on his terms. So I've sent him the link. He's going to join in the next 24 hours, And so you have to be, you can still like mess these things up and make sales. Again, we don't want to overwhelm you and say that if you don't do every single thing right, you won't make a sale. But it's actually easier than you think to start noticing these things on the call. And there's little takeaways that you can see. Like if somebody asks you for advice, right? When should I join? All right, external decision maker. I need to maybe tell her when to join or tell her when to buy or him when to buy. Internal decision maker. I might need to not push too hard, because it might actually repel them. And so this dynamic sales script idea is big. And also I had a guy once, I did a call with him and he starts asking me, how many hours should I expect to put into this? How many hours into this? Literally pen and paper in front of him, right? Numbers guy. I know he has to be closed using statistics and numbers. He doesn't care about impact and like numbers. And then repair versus replacement. Again, you got to just, and it's a very simple question. Like Alan said, it's like, are you here to repair what you're currently doing? Or are you trying to find something new? Because if you're trying to sell them something they don't want, it's just going to make it so much more difficult. So the zoom out position here for you to look at everything is just that they're not all the same, but there's these little differentiations that actually should change how you try to close those sales, and they have a huge impact. So yeah, that's that on that front. And then on the phone, this kind of, I just kind of touched on it a little bit, but there's people who will buy right on the phone, right? And then there's people who will buy tomorrow. There's people who will buy next week. There's people who will buy next year. In fact, we just had a sales call with a guy who I looked him up after the call, and I realized that we had a conversation 2 years ago on Facebook. So he bought another product from us like 2 years ago. Somehow we had a quick chat and then didn't hear anything from him. I did, obviously it wasn't on my radar, and then we did another call. So people are going to be different in that respect. But I know if you go buy any of these closer products out there, they're going to be like, you got to, get the credit card on the phone, like close. But yes, that's good. But there are cases where you might need to chill a little bit, especially if you're dealing with an internal decision maker. So that's that. We have the rapport, discovery, and delivery in here, but you kind of covered that, right? In the last slide?
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of move on to after they buy. And would you agree, Alan, that this is kind of the part, assuming they do make the sale, that a lot of people just kind of screw up?
I don't know if they screw up. Honestly, I don't have any experience. I don't know how other people do things. I don't really pay attention to how a lot of other people do things. I just kind of like.
I'm saying that just based on hearing from a lot of people how when they join our program, they're kind of like surprised that we actually take care of them.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, so, like most people, again, like, it's like you buy and they stick you in a course with like, one call, and it's very like there's this distance, right, between them and who they bought. So it's like people were, you got access to like, the closeness of this expert, and as soon as you gave him money, he kind of told you to fuck off, and like he's putting you in a members area, without, and people feel cold, right? And so like what we do is like after I buy for you, we make an experience, right? And basically it's like, let me onboard you right now, and let's focus on getting your results, and like so we have onboarding worksheet templates, whatever. So basically like I got this from like the process I got this from was part, when I used to do a lot of consulting, and then secondly it was from the army. I was fascinated how the army could just take these people that were just like average Joes and turn them into soldiers, right? And they had this process. And so it was basically like boot camp style. And so that's what we do. It's like, we have the calls, we have the tools we give them, and then we just basically help them mold those tools to their needs, right? Because everybody's slightly different. They're about 20 to 30% different with different needs, different experiences, different issues, right? Some people are great writers, some people are great on video, some people are really good technically, right? And then people work at different rates, and so you got to kind of keep that on track. And so like our core of our accelerator is Slack, right? And so like, we thought about killing it like 10 times now because like, but every time we, came close to killing it. It was like,
We see the value in it.
yeah, people like, it kills the soul of the business, right? And basically the reason for that is there's a certain level of intimacy there and access, right? And enjoyment, right? And so, we tried, we have a Facebook group, and like not many people post in the Facebook group. Nobody really cares as much, in there. And so you want to basically have an experience, right? So, how you conduct it should be reflective of your personality. So, if you're somebody who doesn't want to, who doesn't like, talking to people a lot, then, maybe you shouldn't do Slack, because what'll happen is like if you do Slack and you don't like talking to people, answering customers or their questions, like let's say when they reach out to you, then it can actually backfire, because it'll make the experience worse. You know what I mean? So like whatever is suited for your personality, that's what you should do. So if like a Facebook group is suited for your personality, then you should do a Facebook group. If, doing one call a week is suited for your personality, do one call, whatever. But basically you want to have congruence, and they should feel that, you really, care about them, right? That's how you get them results, right? Because of the experience, they bond to the experience. Because even like after they buy your shit, like after they give you money, they're still not sure. They're like, oh man, I just sent a lot of money to these people. It's like, is this gonna be good or not, right? And then it's like you want to pleasantly surprise them and say it should be better than anything else, right? And so like it's cool because like when people go through our stuff, what ends up happening is like, like it's weird because like once they go through my sales process and they go talk to anybody else like in the space, they're like, it doesn't work on them anymore, because I kind of like, it's so different. And same thing like after they buy our accelerator, like if they go buy anything else out there, like we had one guy buy our stuff, joined another one, and then like he regretted it because he was like, it was like so shit compared to ours, and so it's like that's a big thing, right? And so like the big takeaway from it is like, you never want to look at, people as one-time transactions, right? You always want to look at a multi-transaction model where it's like you want to get, money from them for years to come by selling them stuff. Yeah.
There you go. And I think with that, we can do a little summary / recap. And if you guys have any questions, for those of you guys that are live right now, why don't you line them up in the chat, and then we'll answer those before we get on out of here from day 6. So architected so they willingly want to give you more money. I noticed it says here on the slide, because like Alan kind of pointed out many times here, it's not only about getting, acquiring a customer, it's also about getting them to pay you again. And if you do things right, then, if you don't just buy it and discard them, if you don't just have them come in, they buy from you, you discard them as a person and as a customer, you email them 6 times a day, then there's not really going to be a lot of repeat business. But if you do it right, then you can acquire the customer once, and then 5 years from now, you could launch some program and they might be a buyer of that if you've treated them right. So this way you really become less dependent on ads, and you acquire the customer once. So important. There's getting them to come to you when they do come to you on the phone and after they buy, getting them to come to you. It's a lot of, planting seeds and that awareness bridge and nurturing people, right? It's amplifying the desire versus having them come in and then just filtering off like, how much do you make? Okay, you deserve a call. How much do you make? You deserve a call. How much do you make? You deserve a call, right? Instead of doing that, we're amplifying your desire by having a 7-day fast start where we give a lot of value, and, it's going to move the needle for us, and you should do the same. So a lot of it goes into the value bomb. So just providing value and planting seeds. And then when they come to you, be mindful or like try to when you're talking to them, try to figure out like, what am I dealing with here? Is it a numbers person? Is it a person looking for impact? Are they looking for proof? Like, do they want to hear case studies? Are they trying to repair their business, replace their business or situation, depending on what you're selling? And then are they external? Are they internal? How do they make decisions? Do they want to be told what to do? Or do they want to gather information and make a decision on their own? So if you take those things in, you can start to notice that different people are receptive to different kinds of information. And on the phone, rapport, discovery, and delivery. So like Alan said, you just, kind of shoot the shit, and then, it's about kind of figuring out what the problem is that they have, and then like a doctor. So it's very sort of consultative selling, which I think resonates with people a lot, because it doesn't have that sleaziness to us that we've all been exposed to, the high pressure sales stuff, and it's just uncomfortable for everybody. But what we do is very much consultative, and we just kind of let our diagnosis of the problem and the explanation of the solution do a lot of the talking for us. So there's that. And then after they buy, take care of them. Take care of them and give them an experience. Remember, coaching and consulting, even agency, very much you're in the feelings business. It's about making people feel they got value. Of course, you got to deliver as well, but a lot of it is the feeling side. And you know who crushes this? Our nanny. You, of course, you. But our nanny, she has this. I know she's really good. Like, she knows when she's been, too absent from work, she had to like take a couple of days off, and she had to leave early and whatnot. And like, she can just kind of sense when we're almost getting like kind of tired of her. We're like, maybe we need to find a replacement. And then of course the next day she'll bring like loads of gifts for our kids and like cake and stuff. And like the kids light up, and it's all about the kids. So when we see the kids light up, we go, oh, maybe she's not that bad after all. She is an absolute master at that. So it's really interesting. She's very much in the feelings business. All you nannies out there, you're in the, what is the parent feeling business? That's the business that you're in. So it's very, very fascinating. And this is a really big topic. So all of you guys that are serving clients very much have to consider the feeling side of things. And to be honest with you, I'm not suggesting you do this, but even if you weren't able to deliver the outcome, if you actually nailed the feelings part of it, you would probably do okay. It's not an excuse to not be able to fulfill, but that's just the way it is. So like the feelings part of it is that important. So that's kind of the summary. And as far as action steps go, I would say just really for those of you guys that are out there and doing calls and so on, start to try to pay attention to what kind of a person you're dealing with, repair, replacement, internal, external, numbers person, impact, like what is their sort of archetype? What do they want out of life? Like what's their number one core driver in life? And then based on that, it's going to help you
get rich or die trying.
Yep.
All right, guys,
Get
question and answers. Ask us questions and we'll give you answers. And then we're going to go get on with our damn day. Yeah.
All right, we have a question here.
Well, do you guys like this? Do you guys like these calls? Like, the blunt honesty and like just telling you how shit really works? I feel like the industry needs this. Like, it's all this like sugar-coated shit. Like, it's like, this is raw, uncut marketing, how it really is from the dark lords of the internet. All right, questions. Who's got questions? What about Inner Circle for paying clients? Yeah, Inner Circle works. I mean, that's like a $3,000 price point. So that's another thing. Like, it's, Inner circle typically is like a 3K price point. It doesn't really have as much responsibility on you as much, but accelerator gets some results, so it's kind of up to you. We should do an inner circle.
So that was actually an answer to the question, which was, I have an existing private group that come from my free offer. Can I convert my private group to accept new members who are paying the $5 offer?
Yeah, why not? You can do anything you want. There's no rules. You make up the rules. There's no rules. You can do anything you want. And you can always manage it. You should sustainable. Don't build it just for money, because then you'll build a prison for yourself, and it's not fun. It's not sustainable, right? So that's a really big one. Like one pattern I've seen of super successful people is like their businesses end up being like by design or by luck, extension of their values, and they just kind of can chip away at it for years to come, right? So more questions, guys. Don't be shy. You can ask us questions. We're here for you. We won't hold back. Whatever you need help with, and it doesn't have to be about this topic. It can be about other topics, sales, whatever you want. Ask and we shall tell.
You need marriage counseling. We're here for you guys. What car to buy? T-shirts.
Well, we just send affiliate links, so we get a little bit of a kickback.
Sage has a question. Am I right to think it seems like a huge part of this goes back to attracting the demographic that fits what you can do, not doing the thing each person wants? So is that question on the fulfillment side of things? Because, obviously one of the things that we find very important with this Done With You model is sort of, you can't take on people, and we've done this in the past, we start everything with an idea of here's what we do, right? We help people do, front end offer, awareness bridge, back end offer, and then, we run it on Facebook or Google or whatever. But there's a pretty specific idea of what we do, how we can help people. But then people find out about us and they come to us and they have, an idea or a business model or whatever that's kind of out of scope with what we do. And so in the past, we've kind of accepted those people. But then what happens is you start building this thing that you can't really systemize anything. You can't really productize anything. You can't really get, economies of scale in terms of like knowledge and all these things. So there's no streamlining anything. And so in that regard, I don't know if that's exactly what the question was. Feel free to sort of clarify. But from that perspective, very much important to start saying no to people. And we know other people. I think it was... what's his name? Russell Ruffino, right? He did really well in the coaching industry. And I think one of the things that he said, I think I heard it from you, Alan, was that one of the big things that helped them in their business was when they started saying no to people that they knew were like a little bit out of scope, So in the beginning, you probably want to take on as much business as you can, to be honest with you. But as you start to grow that thing, make sure that you don't have 1 year, 2 year contracts with people that are out of scope. And then you can start to refine that and start saying no to people as you go. So that's going to help you a lot.
Mm-hmm. Preach. Yeah, for sure. It's a great concept, yeah. Build your business how you want to business. It's your business, But yeah, it's cool. All right. Who else? What other questions you guys have? Oh yeah, guys, give us your biggest takeaway in the group. Let me grab that link. Let me get that link.
Grab that link. Let us know in the Facebook group. Just write a post. My biggest takeaway from day 6 was blah 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 blah. Helps us understand what's resonating with you guys, what's sort of, going to stick with you, and so on, and then we can double down and teach you more about that.
And it makes very helpful. And it makes other people feel like they missed out on some good shit too. That's the other reason to do it. But yeah, you guys should
absolutely
let us know your takeaway seriously, because the more you guys can tell us like what you guys kind of like and enjoy, the more we can kind of aim the content to help you. And if enough interest, I think there is, we will do these like on a weekly basis. Just get on here and just talk. That's what we're good at. We're good at talking. Get the gift of gab. Get the gift of talk. It's crazy. Like on our in our accelerator, it's like our show up rate is like insane. Like 80% people show up for like a year straight. Video value, it doesn't have to be video. So the question is like, our video value bombs preferred. Whatever you're good at, like for example, I'm extremely good at talking, right? So it's like I just get on, I can talk out of my ass for like 5 hours, as you can see, right? And some people, can get on video and they can be on video for 5 hours. Some people can write, and so it's just like, it depends what you're good at. Like, so whatever's your natural mode of communication, do it, So
agreed.
It all works, So it's like whatever you want, like, combining all of them would be the best actually, but don't let it hold you back, if whatever. The other interesting thing is a lot of people are shy to get on video, right? It's like, they might have bad teeth, big nose or whatever, and it's like, nobody cares, like, whatever. It's like, I saw this one.
I got bad teeth. I go on camera. I don't give a shit.
We gotta stop biting people, man. I saw this one ad from this guy, and like, he's kind of like odd looking, and like he had like 800 likes or something. I was like, that's fucking cool, right? And totally awesome. Like, people don't really care. I mean, we're getting to the point of society where it's just like, it's kind of cool. It's not, in the 80s and 90s and stuff, we were living like the magazine era, right? So like the magazines defined what like people should look and what's norm, right? Like the standards, they set the standards, right? And if you weren't close to those standards, you kind of weren't deemed acceptable. But now it's kind of, the shit's like dead. So it's like people are just very open and loving and cool, about things, So it's really awesome, And so like you go out there, help people out, and your stance should be like, look, I'm offering you value, I'm giving you, my experience and trying to better your life. And if you don't like it, fuck off, right? It's like that should be your stance. It shouldn't be like, you asking for their permission or forgiveness. It's like if they don't like it, they can get out of your house, right? And so it's like it's your house, it's your business, it's your life, and you got to realize, guys, in 10 years, none of this shit's gonna matter. Like you can moon people on Facebook and show your ass, it doesn't matter. People, whatever fuck ups you make, it won't matter. Whatever offer you create, it won't matter. None of that shit will matter in a long enough timeline. I'm telling you from experience, right? Because I've been, I have a long enough timeline of doing this, like 17 years. And so what's cool is like, the only thing will matter how much money you got in your bank, right? And so like focus on that and don't focus on any of the other bullshit, because you can't cash likes, comments, or anything, and you can't cash haters. And truly speaking, a lot of people that are and this is speaking because I've seen a lot of I study a lot of our ads and comments. A lot of people are like really angry and stuff. It's not you. It has nothing to do with you. You're just like in the way, right? It's almost like somebody has some bad day and like they bump into you, and they say mean things, and we see that on our ads, people bitching and stuff, and it's like, It's like, hey, it's like, you're
What
running.
you so angry about? It's like a book.
Yeah, you're like on a fucking platform that costs like $2 billion a year to operate for free, and you don't want ads. Like fine, pay for it. It's funny. I actually told a friend of mine last night, Robert. I was like, I think what there should be is like Facebook should charge advertisers like $100 a month for running ads, and like they could make a killing, right? So yeah, like I mean, like all the concerns and stuff that are in your head don't matter, etc. None of that matters because in 5 to 10 years it doesn't it doesn't matter. So just run with it, have fun and enjoy it. And then once you kind of get, it's almost like kids, right? Like you watch kids and they're always happy and playful, and then as adults, like they grow stiff. They care about what other people think, right? And it's weird. It's just to go be playful with it, have fun, So with that, we leave you, our friends. We're gonna go with our day, do some work. Awesome talking to you guys as always. We'll upload this in the Facebook group, and then next call tomorrow. I don't know what the call is about, but today's call was 10 clients. The reason was your
Scaling. Tomorrow's about scaling and optimizing. So
the scary word, scaling. Yeah. So one thing about today's call is like your first 10 clients, because like once you get your 10, you can get your 100. The process is the same, right? And that's why. So I forgot to say it in the beginning. So have a good day, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.